How different colors are created in CRT. I know many of you might know this, but for those who don't know, it's going to be an interesting ride. So when it comes to CRTs, they create light directly on the screen. Well, kind of. An electron beam hits tiny red, green, and blue phosphor dots, making them glow. So for example, for black, the beam doesn't hit those dots. But with just red, green, and blue, how yellow is actually created? There isn't any yellow color there. And you can see it right here. Basically, it's kind of a trick that played on your eyes using red and green. Now, in this case, this is a trinitron, or more specifically trinitron PVM. The electron gun lights up the red vertical stripe and the green vertical stripe right next to each other. So let me show you a close-up. We're going to focus just on the yellow part. So you're going to see that the blue stripe will basically be dark. So this is the yellow part. You can clearly see if it's out of focus, kind of yellow because I'm very close, so kind of losing focus, so you can see it clearly when it blends. But if you put it in focus, you can see that only the red and green are next to each other and they are lit up, not the blue one. The blue one is totally, in this case, in this particular yellow part, is off. So how come when we are so close you can actually see the red and green, and when we look a bit back we can see the yellow? The reason we are perceiving it as yellow because of additive color mixing in our eyes. Now when we are close, the red stripe only eats your eye's red receptors and the green stripe only eats your green receptors, so they stay separate. So when you step back, this limits your eye's resolution, so at a distance, the red and green stripes become too tiny and close together for your eye to see them as separate lines. They blur together. So what you get is kind of overlapping signals, so the light from the red stripe and the green stripe hits the exact same spot on your retina, and this triggers both your red and green receptors at the same time, forcing your brain to combine the signals and see yellow. It is in fact a physical limitation of our vision called spatial mixing. Alright, so this is yellow, relatively close, and then we're going to zoom in and you can see the stripes, only red and green. Alright, now we're going to go back again so you can see how it turns into yellow in our eyes. And for the other colors it's the same, it's just a different mix between the red, green and blue. And in other words, the CRT just controls how strong each of the three beams is, and your eyes blend them into a single color. Now the same goes to how dark or bright a certain color is. Here for example you can see greens, some of them are darker greens, some of them are brighter greens. We're going to talk about white in a moment. Now if you look at this green, which is very kind of neony green, if you take a closer look you can see that only the green shines there. And you can see what happens when it goes from black to very neony green. Let me zoom even further so you can clearly see it. Now I'm going to significantly reduce the speed so you can see the transition, how it happens. So it's going to be much slower, but you can see how it goes from dark or even black, pitch black, to very bright green. Alright, so this is very bright. Now it turns quickly, that's because of course the animation, but you can clearly see it has kind of several stages, right? When it goes from black to dark green and then to very bright green. So you can see the transition between black and dark green and very bright neon-like green. Now some will happen when I just change the brightness. So take a look what happens when I change the brightness, when I increase the brightness and reduce the brightness. Now I'm decreasing the brightness and increasing it, using the knob on my PVM. Now keep in mind, of course, it's not going to be perfect, still recorded using my phone, but you can clearly see the difference, what happens when I increase the brightness. So try to imagine, I'm going to reveal it in a moment, what white will actually be like. But you can see that the brightness increased the overall light output of all the three colors. Or in more technical terms, it raises or lowers the black level by adjusting the electron gun bias voltage. Alright, now let's reduce the brightness completely, whatever I can do on my PVM. You can see this is the result. Now what we're going to do, we're going to change the contrast, which controls the difference between the brightest and darkest areas of the image. Or in more technical terms, it increases or decreases the peak-to-peak video signal amplitude and changing how far the beam swings between dark and bright. Or in other words, how bright the brightest part of the image get relatively to the black baseline. So now that you know that, can you guess how white looks when it comes to leading up each of the colors? So let's focus on the sails, which is a white color in the image. And what you're gonna see is that white is created when all three electron guns, red, green, and blue, fire at 100% full intensity simultaneously at the same spot. So when you step back, your eyes' red, green, and blue light receptors are all completely stimulated at the exact same time, and your brain possesses this maximum equal combination of all three primary colors as pure white. So in this case on the Trinitron, white is actually just a bright red stripe, a bright green stripe, and a bright blue stripe glowing together at max power side by side. Now you can understand that gray is basically the same thing, but with lower intensity, reduced power level, for example like 50% of the brightness that you see when you look at something that appears white. Alright, so you can see here white. And now we're going to take back, and you can see, on the right side, of course. I'm going to go a bit back. And you can see how it turns those three colors with the same, more or less the same intensity, turns into something that looks, for eyes, look white. In Donkey Kong Country, we'll look at the blue. Part of it's kind of cyan, and part of it's kind of more close to white. And if we get closer, we can see that this kind of blue, more cyan blue, is actually a combination of blue and green. And because it's more kind of very bright light blue, they are lit very prominently. This is beautiful, of course, to see in the game, the different colors when it moves between blue, cyan, white, the transition, the gradients looks really beautiful in the game. Now I'm going to show you that if we move to the white section of the image, where the clouds are presented there, all colors are lit equally with the same high intensity. Now with color temperature, you have also different settings in some CRTs. If you have the cool one, like for example 9300 Kelvin, the blue gun is pushed higher while the red gun is dialed back. And if you have 6500 Kelvin, for example, which is a warm color temperature, the red and green guns are giving a slight boost while the blue gun is turned down to match. Now of course this is demonstrated on a Trinitron Sony PVM, but on a consumer CRT TVs is going to work the same way, but the physical structure changes how the colors blend at the microscopic level. So for example on Shadow Mask you have the arrangement of the phosphors in tiny triangular triads of round dots, red, green, and blue of course, behind the metal plate full of holes. But the way colors are perceived in the same way. I hope some of you found this interesting and insightful. If you do, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.